When my brother Kevin disappeared, the police closed the case 3 weeks later. He had no enemies, debts, or strange habits. He just packed his backpack, refueled the car and left. As he wrote to me in a message, "I'm going to see the old village, the one next to the mill. Then I'll tell you what I found." There was no more word from him. Many people thought that he had simply moved to another city and started a new life. Even the parents accepted it. They had to move on somehow. But I'm not. He wasn't like that. We have traveled together since childhood. He always sent photos, wrote coordinates, and let us know if he spends the night in a tent. This time was different. I started looking for it myself. I rewound his route, collected all the checks from his bank card, and asked people at gas stations. So I came to a small dilapidated settlement, marked on the old map as Dunridge Hollow, a village in a lowland, overgrown, long forgotten. Kevin's last entry on his phone, the coordinates leading there. This village was partially demolished back in the 80s, because of landslides, infrastructure problems, but in fact, because of something that no one really talked about. I found a couple of mentions on the forums of diggers and local historians. It all came down to one thing: it was better not to go there. Especially to the mill. In the photographs, the mill looked creepy even in daylight, a long, elongated brick building that had fallen out in places, with narrow attic windows and an old metal mechanism at the entrance. I didn't believe in the stories. He believed only in facts. And one of them was like this: my brother drove there and disappeared. I rented a pickup truck, took with me a set of tools, a flashlight, a canteen with water, a first aid kit, a change of clothes and a map. There was no asphalt to Dunridge Hollow. I drove the last mile along an overgrown track until I had to leave the car and walk. When I entered the village, I had the feeling that I had entered a strange, alien world. All the houses were dilapidated, as if they had been gnawed by time. Wooden shutters hung down like broken arms, roofs caved in, doors stood wide open. Not a single sound. There weren't even any birds. Just the wind blowing through the boards and blowing dust out of the windows. I found 3 houses where it was still possible to walk across the floor without falling through. One was a former store. I found an old showcase with broken bottles and frames with faded price tags. The second one is residential, with a child's bed and toys covered with dense cobwebs. The third is a house with an attic, which I found. Boot 1. Kevin's shoe. I remembered him. We used to buy them together before going to the national park. I checked it. It had a torn backdrop, like my brother's. There was an aluminum flask nearby, the same one he had on his belt. It was a footprint. I was there. The mill was further away, about a mile from the center of the village, on the outskirts. I got there in the evening. The sun beat through the ragged clouds, turning the sky a rusty red, as if the sky itself was warning them not to come in. But I went. The building was taller than I thought. 4 floors, an old brick building surrounded by a concrete frame, all eaten away by time. The iron doors were smashed down, as if someone or something had knocked them out from the inside. It was empty inside. Quietly. The floor is concrete, with oil stains, as if someone had recently repaired something there. There are old ads on the walls, yellowed and almost unreadable. I made out one of them anyway. Workers are strictly forbidden to stay in the building after sunset. Violations are punishable by dismissal. I felt a chill. Why? Because of an old ad? Because of the empty building? Or is it because I feel like I'm not alone? I went up the stairs to the second floor. There were workshops there, broken mechanisms, chains, hooks, tables with iron parts. I walked along the walls, shone a flashlight, nothing. Only rust and scraps of cloth. But in the far corner, I noticed a door that looked like newer. Not new, no, but not as rotten as everything else. There was a small room behind the door, and in it there was a cot, a tin cupboard, and a table. There's a notebook on the table. I opened it. It was the security guard's notebook. The recordings were sparse, but one caught the eye. 3.08, the boy came again. I kept looking at the second press. I said to stay out of it. In the evening, his jacket was left on the hook. I haven't seen it again. 6.08, 3 people came. They said they were looking for my brother. I didn't let her in. I'm tired of it. It's all the same. 9.08, there was a scream again. Below. I didn't go. 12.08, the light was on in the lower shop. I'm not touching it. None of my business. I could feel the sweat sliding down my back. Who wrote this? When? If the 3 came, did it mean that someone else was trying to look for them? Or is it missing too? I went back down and found the stairs leading down. Basement. A narrow concrete staircase with metal railings. Down, down again, until the air changed. Dampness, dust, the smell of old oil and something rotting. I took out a flashlight. There's an empty hallway to the left, and a door to the right. I pushed her. There was a warehouse inside. But not the usual one. There were wooden boxes like coffins. They're open. One with a rusty knife. The second one had blood-stained clothes. Third, I won't describe what was inside. I'll just say it wasn't clothes. And not a tool. It was a man. Or what's left of it. I ran back out, not breathing. He stopped at the wall, tore out his breakfast, and spat, gasping for breath. Then I heard it, sound. Not footsteps. The rattle. Metal on metal. Somewhere up there. I turned off the flashlight and leaned against the wall. He was breathing. Gradually. He hardly breathed. Waited. When the sound was gone, I got up again, not out of curiosity, but because I knew Kevin could be here somewhere. Or at least what's left of it. I slowly climbed back up to the first floor, still feeling the taste of rust and panic in my mouth. The air was thick, as if someone had squeezed all the oxygen out of it, and now they had to share it with dirt, dust, and fear. There is heaviness on my legs, and a pressing hum in my head. I wasn't looking for adventures anymore. I just wanted to understand what happened here and find at least a trace of what was left of my brother. At least that's something. When I returned to the main workshop, I noticed that one of the lifts, which used to lower bags and equipment into the lower compartment, was swaying slightly. Not much, barely perceptible, as if a draft was moving a metal cable. I walked over. Next to it is a control panel, covered in dirt and rusty stains, but with one relatively clean switch. Someone touched it recently. I didn't press it. I was just looking at the elevator, at the oil stains and a strange, brownish liquid on the floor that looked like blood, but dried so much that it was already part of the concrete. I walked around the shop one more time and only then noticed a small door in the wall, boarded up from the outside with a thick wooden board. She stood out, too clean, as if she hadn't touched time. There are deep notches on the board, as if someone was trying to get out from inside. Nails? A tool? I did not know. But the board was held down by two old metal bolts. I took out a screwdriver and started unscrewing it. My hands were shaking. I didn't know what I was more afraid of, to open or not to open. When the board fell, cold air hit my face. There was a narrow passage behind it, damp, brick, with a ceiling so low that I had to walk bent over. I turned on the flashlight. The floor is earthen. The walls have remnants of insulation and are covered with mold. I walked for about 10 minutes before I found myself in a room the size of a garage. There was a table, two metal chairs, and a camera. The usual black one, like for shooting a blog. The power was dead, but there was a battery inside. I picked her up and took her upstairs. I returned to the car and found an external battery in my backpack. Enabled it. The screen lit up. There were 3 videos. All of them were removed on the last day. I clicked on the first one. Kevin's face is on the screen. He looked exhausted. Selfie videos, poor lighting, but the recognizable mill building is behind. If you're watching this, it means I didn't get out. I came here just out of interest. Everything started out fine, old mechanisms, strange notes. But then I found the basement. It's not just a warehouse. It's there. They were doing something. People. There were people here. I found handcuffs, blood, cages. I know how it sounds. But this is not a joke. They hid people here. I stopped the video. My heart was pounding in my throat. The second file. Kevin is back in the frame, but now in the dark. Her voice is quieter, and her breathing is labored. Someone is following me. I heard footsteps. Someone lives here. Or guards. I tried to leave through the main entrance, but he did. It's closed. Not the door, but the whole grate. Someone blocked it from the outside. I'm hiding in the ventilation right now. If they see it, don't come back. Just call someone. The police. Hell, anyone. I heard someone talking on a walkie-talkie. This is not just a forgery. They're watching. The third file was the shortest. The camera drops. Sounds are heard, heavy footsteps, fast, Kevin's heavy breathing, then, scream. Not a long one, but a short one, strangled, as if he had been grabbed by the throat. Then silence. And everything. I was sitting in this dusty room of the mill, staring at the screen, as if his voice could still be heard from there. And I understood that everything I knew about my brother, everything that I considered urban legends, turned out to be part of reality. Tough, ugly. He didn't get here by accident. And maybe I am too. I wasn't looking for an explanation anymore. I was looking for a way out. I collected everything, the camera, the security guard's notebook, his shoe. And he headed for the exit. But when I got to the front door of the mill, I realized it was gone. I didn't hear it close. I didn't hear a click or a bang. It's just like it's never been opened. I looked around. Empty. But the air has changed. It's not a mystery, it's just a fact. It's wetter. Heavier. It was like someone had just walked in and shut the door behind them. I went back to the workshop, trying to find an alternative way out. But instead I found something else. On the table, where the guard's notebook used to be, there was now a note. The paper is fresh. The handwriting is not Kevin's. I stood there clutching this note so tightly that my fingers turned white. The paper was soaked with sweat, and for a second I thought, or maybe it's all someone's elaborate prank. But no. The cold, the heaviness in his chest, and the emptiness in his eyes all spoke volumes. Someone saw me. Someone was watching. And it wasn't a person from the past, but someone who knew that I was here right now. I clenched my teeth, took the note and moved to the very aisle from where I had brought the camera. Now I had no choice. If the exit was closed, I had to look for another one. Ventilation. Basements. Stairs. Anything. Just don't stay in this main workshop. It's too open, too quiet. After returning to that damp tunnel, I continued on my way to where I hadn't gone then. The path narrowed, the ceiling lowered. The rotten smell was getting stronger. I began to hear faint sounds, not footsteps, not voices, but as if the building itself were breathing, the groan of boards, drops, falling dust. Everything here was alive. Alive, not in a mystical sense, but in the most mundane, the present. This place was not abandoned. It was used. And it continues to be used. I went out into the basement. For the first time, a real basement. Not a warehouse. There were cameras here. Not modern, but homemade. Cells welded from rebar. And there are leftovers in each one. Old mattresses, bandages, chains. One lock was fresh, almost not rusty. In the other corner is a bucket of water that has not yet evaporated. Someone was here. Quite recently. I quietly examined the shelves, everything that was there. Map. Drawings. Lots of old photos. People. Men, women. Some with signatures. Dates. Prices? Kilograms? I didn't understand. But one thing was clear, it wasn't a game. These photos were real. Someone was fixing people. Where and when they were spotted. Or, perhaps, where they disappeared. On the back of one photo there was an inscription, "It works." Quiet. Without a family. I shuddered. I put the photo away when I noticed a plastic card in the corner of the drawer, like a pass. Black, with a faded barcode. The number is stamped on top. I took her away, not knowing why. Perhaps it will reveal something that is yet to come. The tunnel led me into a narrow room that looked like an old office. Wardrobe, desk, telephone. I picked up the phone, and there was silence. There's no signal. There is dust on the table, except for one place. Someone was sitting here recently. The monitor is covered with a layer of dirt, but the keyboard is clean. I pressed the power button. A squeak. Silence. He repeated it. The screen flashed. Black and white interface. Login window. After thinking for a couple of seconds, I entered the name from one of the photos. The password is the number from the card. It's gone. A window with 3 items opened. Cameras. Movements. Archive. I clicked cameras. 4 windows. One thing is the empty workshop where I've just been. The second is the passage I was walking through. And on the screen, me. Right now. With a delay of a couple of seconds. The third is the stairs. Empty. The fourth is the bedroom. Bed. Someone's on it. Alive. Human. Man. On the back. Chained up. It doesn't move. The camera jerked. Another person appeared in the frame. Without a mask. Wearing gloves. He sat down next to her. He put his hand on the chest of the man lying down. I pressed the back button. I selected movements. The last activity was 12 minutes ago. In the same basement where I was. Someone was walking through the cell right after me. I froze. This man, he knew I was there. And he came right after. I didn't look for it. Just passed through. He knew the way. The last one is the archive. There were audio files. Only one with a label, March, cleaning, do not delete. I turned it on. Whoever finds this is either an idiot or the next one. It's not ghosts, it's work. Money. Product. People think that such places are dying. But they live. Because others are dying. And the more you ask, the less you live. If you're already here, you have an hour. Maybe two. It is better to spend them on output rather than understanding. Understanding comes last. And then the bones. The voice was rough and senile. Not scared. Sure. And I realized, I don't need to know who they are. I need to find a way out. I returned to the tunnel, but now everything seemed different. It was as if space had shifted slightly. Everything was in place, but the way back seemed unfamiliar. I didn't recognize the bricks, the dust lay differently. I walked, checking each step against my memory, until I found myself at the elevator again. It was turned on. A green light was flashing on the panel. There is an open mine below. I didn't think about it. I just stood in it and pressed the button. The elevator slowly went down. Everything was shaking and grinding. The mechanism was old, but it worked. Which means that someone is serving him. The elevator stopped. Darkness. I turned on the flashlight. In front of me is a corridor, but of a completely different type. Metal. Clean walls. Cables. Lamps. Workers. Ventilation. It's as if the other side of the mill is hidden, alive, and working. I walked down the hallway. Silence. No footsteps, no voices. Just the hum of electricity and a draft coming through the pipes. And then I saw him. Kevin. He was sitting with his back to me. On a chair. Shirtless. Hands at your sides. The head is lowered. I said his name. He didn't answer. I came closer. He reached out with his hand out. I touched his shoulder. Heat. He was alive. But he didn't react. Not by touch, not by voice. It's like it's disabled. I bent down and looked at his face. His eyes were open, but his gaze was empty. Without focus. Without awareness. He was looking right through me, as if his mind was somewhere far away, inaccessible. His lips were slightly parted, and his breathing was shallow and shallow. No blood, no bruises. But his whole body looked exhausted, as if he had been here for months instead of days. I whispered his name again, louder. Then he shook it. Nothing. Then I began to inspect the room. It was small, isolated, with one door without a handle on the inside. There are wires hanging from the remote control, an old monitor, and a pair of connectors on the wall. Apparently, he was sitting here all the time, tied to some kind of system. He was being held not physically, but mentally. It was broken inside. Cut off from reality. I went to the door. It opened from the outside. I knocked. Nothing. If I tried it, it was locked. He returned to the console. Some of the wires were pulled out. I tried to put them back in place, something short-circuited, the screen blinked, came to life for a second, and went out. Kevin twitched. I whirled around. He began to slowly raise his head. The eyes are glass. I took a step back. Kevin, it's me. Do you remember me? Silence. Then a barely audible, hoarse voice. Go away. What? Go away, while you can. No. I've come for you. We're leaving together. Do you hear? He shook his head. His lips twitched. You don't understand, the door will open, soon, and then. He didn't finish. A lock clicked somewhere in the wall. I froze. He heard it before I did. He knew what was going to happen. His words are not a threat, not a fear. Warning. The door outside began to creak. I rushed to Kevin, grabbed him by the arms, trying to lift him up. He was like a bag of bones. My legs wouldn't hold up. He didn't resist, but he didn't help either. The only thought was to get him out of here, at any cost. The door opened. First, the gap. Light. Then a step. 1 second. I didn't turn around. He pulled Kevin to the opposite wall, groping for at least some kind of passage, an air duct, a hatch, anything. But then I saw an old metal cabinet in the corner. Not closed. It's empty inside, but it's big enough for both of us to fit in. I pushed Kevin in first, climbed in after him, and closed the door, leaving a narrow crack so I could see what was going on. A man came into the room. Tall. All in working order. Without a mask. Without weapons. Just a confident person. He walked over to the chair where Kevin was sitting, and only then realized that Kevin had disappeared. He didn't scream. I didn't start looking. He just stood up, exhaled, and took out his walkie-talkie. The target has been moved. Probably not alone. Block the exits. I'll take a look at Sector D. The radio clicked and he went out. Slowly, without fuss. The door closed again. And I heard a key turning outside. We got out of the closet. I'm almost dragging Kevin. He began to come to life a little bit. He began to lean on my shoulders, breathe more often. "How long have you been here?" I asked when we reached the hallway. "I don't know," he croaked. "At first it was thought, then it was just dark." "Who are they?" He paused. "People. The most common ones. But they use places where no one is looking. Where everything has been written off for a long time. They don't even have to hide. Just stay invisible." "Why did you come here then?" He looked at me. His gaze focused for the first time. "I was looking for my brother." I didn't say anything. I just squeezed his hand and led him on. The corridor was divided into 3 directions. I chose the middle one. It led down. There was no time to think. Just go. At the end is an old garage. Metal gates. Rust. There is a keyboard panel on the side. "Do you have a map?" Kevin asked. I took out the one I found in the basement. He took it and ran it over the panel. A click. The gate lifted slightly. It was enough for us to slip through. We were outside. An open space. Old cars overgrown with grass. Storage containers. And the track. Leading to the forest. "We'll get you out," I said. He just nodded. We ran. I had so much strength. There was no shouting or pursuit from behind. Just silence. And it was even more frightening. We kept running until the forest became darker and denser. Kevin was breathing heavily, his steps slowing down. I couldn't stop because I knew if we stayed here, we'd get caught again. There could be more than just guards behind us, but something much scarier. The forest stretched to the horizon, but in the darkness I could barely make out the road. I just knew that I had to move. He was exhausted. I felt his hand weaken on mine, as his body became heavy, as if he was losing consciousness. I put him on my shoulder and went deeper into the forest. "Hold on, Kevin. We need to move faster." "We're almost at the exit," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't answer. It wasn't just fatigue. It was something else, as if he didn't believe salvation was possible. I pulled him out of the undergrowth and into an open space where I could at least see a little bit. There were no roads, no footprints, no people. Just a dull silence, as if everything around us had stopped. Suddenly I stopped. No matter how much I ran, I suddenly realized that we weren't alone. That sound. That quiet, barely audible noise, footsteps approaching. Ignoring Kevin, I turned sharply in the direction of the sound. See. He is the same person. He was standing right at the edge of the forest, watching us intently. He didn't move. He didn't move. I was just watching. Strange. No signs of aggression, but not friendly either. He was wearing the same work suit as before, without a weapon, without reaction. He was just watching. I felt Kevin become even more tense, his body tensed. It was something strange. He knew this man. Or knew who he was. I pulled him along again. We had to leave. But the man didn't move. He just stood there. And while I was pulling Kevin along, I managed to notice how his gaze suddenly became more intense. It was as if this man was ready to stop us. I felt that if I kept going, I was taking a risk. But if we don't move, whoever's with him will catch up with us. Then I understood. It wasn't just a man. It was a symbol. A symbol of everything that happened here. Whoever stayed here, who was watching, knew that Kevin and I weren't the only ones who wanted to escape. This man was just a guard. He knew what was going on in these places. He knew who we were, and he knew we wouldn't leave here. As I continued to stare at him, his figure disappeared into the darkness. And at that moment, I realized that our chances of salvation were very minimal. Kevin suddenly pulled away from my hand, his eyes returned to normal, as if he had regained consciousness. He looked around. "We can't get away," he said. "You have to understand that. All we need to do is go back." I froze. I couldn't believe what Kevin had just said. Go back there? Here? I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. I didn't know what he meant. "Do you want to go back there?" I asked, holding my breath. He nodded slowly. And his gaze turned blank again. "I can't go there. They won't leave us alone." I felt something inside me break. But I knew one thing. If I stayed here, I wouldn't be able to help him. I had to choose. I looked at Kevin. His eyes clouded over again, but I knew we couldn't stay here. We had to go back to the place where we came from. I nodded, hoping I could get him back, hoping it wasn't over yet. "Come on. We can still leave." When we returned, everything was not as I remembered. Everything seemed alien. There was no sign of us in the place we had left. The walls were covered with mold, and the air was so heavy that I could feel it pressing down on my chest. It seems that everything we've been through has been nothing more than nonsense. Or maybe it was part of something bigger? I couldn't figure out what it was. All I knew was that I had to leave. But here's the question that haunts me. What if we're never allowed to leave? What if all these places, these people, these events, they just sit in your head until they catch up with you, make you part of this terrible circle? I looked around. Where are we now? Where is the line that separates us from all this? Who really controls our reality? And so, I stood there, but my head was empty, as if I still hadn't left. Everything kept spinning, and I couldn't stop feeling it. What do you think? Could it be that everything is happening? Write in the comments what you think about it.